Hey everybody, have you considered starting a podcast? We here at Screwball give Podbean a high level of recommendation. Podbean has given us the ability to easily bring you Screwball each and every week on all of your favorite podcast services. Use the link podbean.com/screwball to sign up and save up to 35% annually. You can also use the link podbean.com/pro/screwball to sign up for a business subscription. Happy podcasting. Hey everybody, welcome back to Screwball, a baseball podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host Mike Lepre, here with my co-host Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
Now this is the next episode in our Around the Horn top 10 lists. Last episode we did the middle infield, we did 4 and 6 on the numerically around the field. This time we're going to go third base and left field, which is 5 and 7. As we explained last week, we went a little out of order just because we thought that the middle infield kind of made sense together. Third base and left field doesn't necessarily make much sense together, but they are on the same side of the diamond, so I guess if you look at it that way, it does make sense. But these are also two great positions. Got some legends that we're definitely going to talk about. Really, both of the top 10s here, both of our top 10s for both positions are really packed with great players and legends and recent legends and all kinds of players. So let's just jump right into it with third base. And I'll start with my honorable mentions here. So in no particular order, my 4 honorable mentions are Graig Nettles, Buddy Bell, Ken Boyer, and Sal Bando. All great third basemen in their own right, but couldn't quite crack the top 10. You'll see why in a sec. So for my list, number 10 is Scott Rowland. Number 9 is Ron Santo. Number 8 is Brooks Robinson. Number 7 is Wade Boggs. Number 6 is Adrian Beltray. Number 5 is A-Rod. Number 4 is George Brett. Number 3 is Eddie Matthews. Number 2 is Chipper Jones. And number 1 is Mike Schmidt. So Mike Schmidt topping my list is kind of, maybe to a lot of fans, kind of obvious at this point. Mike Schmidt is at the top of probably a lot of people's list. What may be a little different is that we've said this in previous episodes, but we did include A-Rod on these third base lists instead of shortstop. And, you would expect that statistically he would probably go up there close to Mike Schmidt and Chipper Jones. And I mean, after all, he almost has 700 home runs, 3,000 hits. But and you'll see with Frank's list too, as with our other lists, the steroid guys kind of get a little bit of I guess you call it a demotion or a little bit of a different ranking because of their, A-Rod's one of the guys that's kind of an egregious steroid case. So he cracked my top 5, but I couldn't quite put him higher than that. Some people may find it strange that George Brett is not number 2, which is usually often the case, is Schmidt and George Brett are 1 and 2. I'll get into that a little bit once Frank gives his list. But I think top to bottom, 1 through 10 are awesome third basemen, and hopefully number 10 here, Scott Rowland, hopefully he can get into the Hall of Fame soon. We got the vote coming up. So I'm really hoping. I mean, he's a top 10 third baseman, I think, pretty clearly. And the fact that he may not get into the Hall of Fame, fairly quickly, at the very least, is a shame. I don't know how you can look at it any other way. So that's my top 10. Me and Frank will talk a little bit about it once he gives his top 10. So I'll just throw it over to him and his honorable mentions and his top 10 third baseman list.
Yeah, third base and left field, they're similar positions, really. Third base, obviously, is MVP of your team type position, defensively and offensively. Left field is more offensive than defense, but still, they're some of your best hitters in your lineup are going to come from these two positions. So to get into my third base honorable mention, I start with Graig Nettles. Next one's Home Run Baker. He didn't hit many home runs. Home Run Baker led the league in home runs of 4 straight years.
Oh.
Ken Boyer, Buddy Bell, fantastic base hit kind of guy, and defensively he was really good. Sal Bando, as you mentioned. Stan Hack, another guy from a while ago, good player. And Dale Evans. Dale Evans' average was a little low, but overall he was a really good third baseman. So to get into my top 10, number 10 I got Ron Santo. Playing with the Cubs, not much chance of, I guess, winning over there. There's a lot of Cubs players in the past.
Yeah.
But put together some really good years. Defensively, he was pretty good. Offensively, his average was okay, but defensively, he was really, that was his main thing was defense. Number 9, I got Scott Rowland. As you said, Scott Rowland's a Hall of Famer. He's on the ballot this year. Hopefully, he gets in. Defensively, he's one of the best defensive third basemen of all time. Offensively, he's just as good. Every team he went to, he seemed to make better. Went to the Cardinals and was a big piece of the power lineup they had. Some of the plays he made at third base were just ridiculous. The bare hand plays going towards the line and stuff like that. Even though he was kind of like a thicker third baseman, than some of these guys, he was defensively was fantastic. You couldn't get the ball by him. He could shut down the whole side of the field.
Oh yeah, easily.
So, I love Scott Rowland, fantastic player. To number 8 on my list, I have Brooks Robinson. Defensively, obviously, he's the best third baseman defensively of all time. He's one of the best defensive players at any position of all time. Offensively, not quite Ozzie Smith levels, but
No. God.
you don't really talk to him about offense. 260 hitter, but he was good offensively. You still put him probably maybe 5-6 in your lineup at the time, and you're fine with that. But obviously, his defense was just unbelievable.
Yeah, he was a wizard over there.
He was unbelievable. He was a vacuum cleaner. I really think you can look at him defensively, and you can kind of see the Arenado mold that he made, or Matt Chapman, Scott Rowland, those guys who were just defensively ridiculous. But Brooks Robinson was kind of the first one over there like that. Number 7, I got A-Rod. The reason I got him 7, obviously the steroids drop him down. With his stats, pure stats, you're looking at probably the best third baseman of all time, and you're probably looking at maybe top 5, top 6 hitters of all time. But with the steroid allegations throughout his career and other issues, it's hard to put him any higher. But 7 seems to be my spot to put these steroid guys, just because their stats are too good to leave them off. But they're some of the question marks of how they got that stat. You can't really give them their full credit. So I got A-Rod at 7, but I mean his stats obviously are ridiculous, and we said it last week. You could put him on a shortstop list if you really want to. He's really, stats-wise, he's probably the best at both positions, whatever position you put him at.
Sure.
So, number 6, I got Wade Boggs, and he's one of the best pure hitters you were going to see. Not a bunch of power, but he would just slap a base hit. Tony Gwynn type, Rod Carew type, George Brett type.
Yep.
You're just going to slap base hits, and you're just going to move on with your life, and that's just what he did. The problem was with Wade Boggs was he was a lot more offensive than he was defensive, and at a position that you kind of need to be both. He lacked at defense. And I love Wade Boggs, but that's kind of why he's 6 instead of really cracking that top 5. And to get in the top 5, I got number 5, Eddie Matthews. Eddie Matthews, I would love to put higher. I really would. His average is 270, 512 home runs. One of the early on guys to get that. I think he hit like 493 of them or something with the Braves.
Oh, wow.
And here's a quick fact for you. He's the only Brave to play a game or play a season with the Braves in all 3 cities they played in.
Oh, wow.
Boston, Milwaukee, and Atlanta.
That's pretty cool.
He's the only one. People forget about him, though, because he played with, Hank Aaron at times, and I think he even played with Warren Spahn at times. So he played with a lot of these Braves legends.
Yeah.
So he gets kind of missed there, but he was an incredible force in the box. And offensively, I mean, he was just a handful at the plate. If his average was a little higher, he's way up the list. And he's already way up the list. He's 5th on my list. He's 3rd on your list.
Yeah.
His average is a little lower. Defensively, he was great. He was just a really great player.
Yeah, he was.
To stick with the Braves, I got Chipper Jones at 4. Chipper Jones, as a switch hitter, helps him a lot. A winner. Came up clutch all the time. He hit pretty good against the Mets, they say. Named his kid Shea. He batted like 980 against them. Mets fans still hate him. He still loves Mets. But Chipper Jones, he's fantastic. Switch hitter, power. Hit like 50 home runs one year. Not too much with steroid allegations ever came out against him, but I'm sure there was some people, and there's some question marks in some people's heads, like, because he had a couple of years there, he hit like 50 home runs, and then he kind of dropped to like 30 home runs and 20 home runs. You're like, how? What kind of happened there?
Yeah.
Because he had like 2 years where all of a sudden he was like 50-50, and then he was like kind of back to like normal numbers. I think he's the latest too to go into the season with still 400 average, right? He went to June with a 400 average.
Yeah.
He was old too.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, it was what, like 07 or something like that.
Yeah, it was kind of the twilight of his career, or getting there.
Yeah, but Chipper Jones was fantastic offensively. Defensively, he was very good for a while, and then he kind of it fell off a little bit. He ended up being below a negative defensive WAR. That's kind of why I got him at 4 instead of putting up maybe another spot or 2. Number 3, I have it was really hard for me not to put him number one, and that's Adrian Beltray.
Mm.
I really do think he's number one. It's just that the other two guys, everyone knows are 1 and 2, or top 3, and their stats are just as good, and they're legends. But Beltray really is a legend. I just don't think he hasn't earned that legend status yet because he hasn't been out of the game long, and the history of baseball didn't kind of grow yet with him.
Yeah.
His career's done, but like you don't gain that legacy until some years, and he never won. It's a shame.
Yeah.
So Adrian Beltray is fantastic. Defensively, one of the best.
Oh yeah.
Best. Offensively, he arguably is the best. I think he has a 280 career average, over 3,000 hits, home runs. He stole some bases. He couldn't touch his head. He played a long time with the Dodgers. He went to the Red Sox in 1 year, had like 50 home runs. The Mariners, the Rangers. He seemed to just be, just energetic. I feel like he was the franchise for some reason. You didn't want to see him leave.
No, certainly not.
Adrian Beltray is one of my favorite players and one of the most dominant players we've seen in the last probably 30 years. But I have my 3 here, and there's a good reason because the other 2 guys, like I said, their legacies are just unmatched, really. Number 2 is George Brett. He really, crazy to say, he's almost even a little bit better offensive player than Wade Boggs, but they're the same type of player. But Brett was probably a little bit better offensively.
Yeah.
Defensively better. Made the Royals really what they were in those years. They had a good team, but he was the key to it. He really, he was the reason the Royals were good. He came back to baseball with the Royals and helped them build a franchise to win, be competitive for a couple years and win a World Series. And outside his stats of over 3,000 hits and over 300 career average, I think it was 304, 305. The Pine Tar incident, which is big in baseball. So that's always iconic. So you always talk about some iconic moments. And you also talk about, I believe it was the Kansas City DMV. Said if he could bat over 300 or almost bat 400 in the major leagues, then he could pass the driving exam. His eyes are fine. So that's always a famous quote there that they said with him. But George Brett's fantastic. He's a great hitter, a great player, and he really is probably Mr. Royal. And number 1, as Mike said before, Mike Schmidt, his average was not bad, 270, I believe it was. Home runs over 500. I mean, offensively he's really hard to match offensively at third base, and defensively, I think people almost overcredit his offense and forget about his defense. Because defensively, I think he might even be better defensively than he was offensively. But people always think about his offense first.
Yeah, which, I mean, he holds a lot of the records for third base offensive stats, or for at least for a while he did.
Yeah, and defensively, he is the best.
Yeah.
He's like defensively, other than Brooks Robinson. Brooks Robinson's in a whole different league. Yeah. Mike Schmidt is second to him. And then obviously his offense is way better than Brooks Robinson. But defensively, no one really talks about, I don't think, his defense. And he's second best of all time. He could hit the power. I mean, moon shots, long shots, the jump throws at third base, the bare hand plays. He really held down third base, and he really is kind of the definition of third base we talked about last week. We talked about with catcher bench and stuff like that. They look like the shortstops. He looked like a third baseman. He kind of fit that mold. He was like, that's what a third baseman looks like. And that's what they do. Yep. And his importance to the Phillies those years were just unmatched.
Yeah.
The Philly uniforms, the red P on the side, and the red pinstripes, that just fit. It just went together. Mike Schmidt and those uniforms went together. So Mike Schmidt, I mean, like I said, I'd put Beltray up higher, but those 2 guys seem like they're kind of set in stone there. But, I mean, if you wanted to, you could. I really tried to put them there, but those 2, Schmidt number 1 and Brett number 2, they're kind of set in stone, I think, for the most part, at least at the top 3. Brett, I guess I've seen some people put him at like 3, even 4, but I think, Schmidt and George Brett, they're definitely top 3 third basemen really of all time. It's kind of hard to keep them out of there.
Yeah, I agree. George Brett was Mike Schmidt and George Brett were probably like locks for 1 and 2 for me. But then after I looked at the stats with George Brett, I did knock him to 4. I just thought that Chipper Jones being a switch hitter, because believe it or not, George Brett and Chipper Jones have a lot of comparable stats. They're only 2 points off in average, about the same at bats. They're right there with runs and RBIs. Now, obviously, George Brett gets the bump because a lot of what you see out of third baseman now and in Chipper Jones's era came from guys like George Brett and Mike Schmidt. So you got to give him credit there. And George Brett came famously close to the 400, like him and Tony Gwynn, and Chipper Jones, like you said, up until about halfway through the year, got close. So, there's a lot of stuff there. Like you said, just legend of the game, George Brett, the Pine Tar game and stuff like that. So that all factored in. for what he did for baseball, I would definitely say he's number 2. But statistically, and believe it or not, Eddie Matthews ahead of everyone maybe, but even believe it or not, Adrian Beltray I think is like top 3 in third base WAR. I think Eddie Matthews is like number 2 or number 3, right in there.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's why that's just a little justification for me putting him 3, is that he did have a lot comparable, if not better, stats than guys like George Brett, and you could even argue Eddie Matthews number 2. That's how good he was, and I was actually even a little surprised by his stats because we both know how good he was, but then when you actually look at some of these guys' stats, you're like, wow, like he was that good.
Yeah, I think even Eddie Matthews gets missed by people.
I think he does too.
People forget Eddie Matthews. When he was kind of, part of the three-headed monster that kind of built third base. Brooks Robinson, Eddie Matthews, Mike Schmidt. Those guys really built the position and what it looked like. I mean, Eddie Matthews is a lefty with that power stroke, and then defensively, he was a wizard over there as well. He just held down for the Braves. He was there forever. He was there for all 3 cities. I mean, he was there. He gets forgotten, I think, because of Hank Aaron and maybe some Warren Spahn and some of the stuff he played with, some of the players he played with. But I mean, Eddie Matthews is right in the middle of the order every day.
Yeah.
All the time. He's just, just was consistent. A lot of his years were just kind of consistent. That was a big thing with him. But I love Eddie Matthews as well. But third base is such a deep position. I mean, you can go, the top 30 third basemen. You could probably argue, out of 100 players, top 100 players, you can argue maybe 25, 30 of them are from third base.
Oh, yeah. This was one of the first lists I made where every single person in my top 10, I really do love the players. Mike Schmidt, Chipper Jones, Eddie Matthews, George Brett, Beltray, Wade. I mean, these guys are just such... It's such a high WAR position because defensively a lot of these guys are so sound. They're so good.
And that's the difference between third base and first base.
Yeah.
First base, they're offense. If you have defense, fantastic. These guys are like, their offense is almost quite, their offense, if not as good, is almost like the first basemen we talked about. But the defense is 15 points higher. So
Definitely.
That's what makes them so much better in the WAR. And that's why you could say top 25 third basemen could be in the top 100 players because they're position players. Pitchers, can throw it off. But position players, third base is such a high position, just like, we're going to get to, like center field.
Oh, my God.
Because defense there
Yeah.
is a big thing compared, with the offense. So that's what third base. Third base is an anchor to a team. If you get a good third baseman, you're kind of going, you're going in the right direction. It's like if you get a good catcher.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have guys like, Mike Schmidt has the highest WAR, and I think it's only like 102 or something like that, which isn't like, you're not reaching, Lou Gehrig and Albert Pujols. Actually, Albert Pujols is comparable, but you're not reaching like Lou Gehrig or any of those guys. But when you have the top 10 and your lowest WAR guy is like in the 50s and 60s, you're still pretty good.
Yeah. And the reason Gehrig is so high is because he was a good defensive first baseman.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And you can look at Pujols, and he was a good defensive first baseman for a while, but then obviously he's older and that sort of went going down. That's kind of why his WAR. But if you added defense to a lot of them first basemen, you're getting unbelievable players. You take their defense away, and that's why these guys are comparable. The base you get beat up over there. It's a grinding position. It's kind of like being in the outfield with all the running, not quite catching. Third base, you're beat up.
Yeah.
You're diving a lot. You're covering the line. You're involved in a lot of plays. And then you got to go in there and beat the 4-hitter.
Yeah. A lot of these guys were the 3, 4, 5 hitters.
Yeah. Or 1 or 2 hitters.
Yeah.
Wade Boggs, you put him wherever you want.
Yeah, that's true.
You put George Brett wherever you want.
Oh yeah.
So third base is such a deep position, but I think your top 10, for the most part, I think is, I think a lot of lists I would have at least. Every list probably has 8 out of 10 of these guys on their list.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to argue A-Rod at short, there you could take him off the list. If you want to argue that he's a shortstop, that's fine. And then for me, and we have the same guys, but Ron Santo and Scott Rowland, I guess, could be the only ones I could see someone scraping off their list. But other than that, you're not. I don't know how you could take off Brooks Robinson. I don't know how you could take off Wade Boggs and everyone above.
Yeah.
I just don't know, unless you're, like we've talked about in other episodes, unless you're a super sabermetric guy, where some of these guys don't fit a specific mold that you like. It's statistically, I just don't see how these guys, you can scrape anyone off. I just don't. Yeah. I don't see it.
Yeah, third base is a deep position, and it's one of the greatest legacy positions that we have in baseball, and for the multiple reasons of offense and defense. Well, first base is a lot more offense. third base is both.
Yeah. Just fantastic players, fantastic legends. Some of these guys I really do are some of my favorite players of all time. There's no one I really don't like on the list. It's a shame that Ron Santo, as I discussed in last episode, how he was the one that kind of got snubbed, and he got in after he died, like almost like a year after he died. So it was like he didn't get to see his time, he didn't get to see his recognition. Hopefully the same doesn't happen to Scott Rowland. Hopefully he gets in. Hopefully the voters realize how good he is. So we'll see with that. But yeah, I mean, third base is fantastic. So if you want to move on to left field, we can do that now, unless you got any other final words on third baseman.
No, third base, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything we could. Left field's, they're pretty similar positions, really. I think left field, you come up a little bit more defensive. I mean, third base, you come up a little more defensively than left field. But they're very similar positions, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. I had a lot of fun making both these lists. So left field, I had some fun with too. Some of my favorite players on here. A very controversial player on here as well.
A couple.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's two that may not be in the Hall of Fame, even though they hold their respective high records.
And there's another one that's got quite a nickname. Who
and there's a third.
Calls a ruckus back in the day, but I don't think so.
Third one. Yeah, there's three of them on here that might not make the Hall of Fame for really all different reasons.
They're probably three of the best hitters you're ever gonna see.
All right, enough teasing about those guys. You kind of know probably who we're talking about, but yeah, you gotta get him on there.
Yeah.
No, Alfonso Soriano.
Tell me what a good time.
My honorable mentions. One of them might be a little bit of a surprise to you. In no particular order, my honorable mentions are Manny Ramirez, who I think would maybe be a surprise for some people. He's not in the top 10, especially if you're a steroid era guy. Ralph Kiner, Billy Williams, and Lance Berkman are my four honorable mention guys.
Burke show.
Lance Berkman might be actually a little bit of a surprise for people too, that I even have him as an honorable mention, but
part of the Killer Bees.
He was
the other two on there, but the third one.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, they were all good players in their own right. But on to my top 10. Number 10, who we were alluding to earlier, my number 10 is Shoeless Joe Jackson, who, although statistically obviously was kind of handicapped by the fact that he got thrown out of baseball for something that he probably didn't do. I don't think he did.
Pull up his postseason stats from that year. So it's time to get down to it, because I think he batted like 400.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that all you guys kind of know what we're talking about with Shoeless Joe Jackson, but he was, if you're not familiar, he was part of the Black Sox scandal in, I think it was 1918.
And what gets me with this? What gets me is when you're going to pull up the stats here, because I don't remember it exactly. He's part of that. He played very, very well in the World Series. You got someone like Ray Schalk, who's on that team. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was on that team.
Yeah.
Am I right? Wasn't he on the Black Sox team? 1919, 1918?
I think so, yeah.
He made it. And his offensive stats don't look no good.
Mm-mm. All right, so for some reason on here, it only has the 19... It was 1918, right? Was the Black Sox? Or was it 1919? Or was it 1919?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because he's only in 2 years. It was 17 and 19. Yeah, so, excuse me, it was 1919.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, in 1917, although it's not the year, I'm just kind of for context, he batted .304 in the playoffs. And then in the 1919 year, the infamous year, he batted .375 in the World Series, which at that time, that was kind of all there was. And, again, if you're not familiar, he was accused along with the rest of the team for throwing the World Series.
No,
and
pull up Ray Schalk's stats for the World Series. I want to see. We're going to find out right now who was throwing the World Series.
Yeah, and it is kind of an infamous thing around baseball that he got thrown out of baseball and he batted .375 in the World Series. How could you throw that?
In the World Series back then, I think it was best of 9.
Yeah. Was it still best of 9 at that point?
7 games that series.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, it was a 3-game series. It takes a couple of hits,
He played 8 games.
So it was 8 games. So it was best of 9, 8 games, I believe.
Mm.
So he played 8 games to do that. It wasn't like, 2 games. He had a couple of hits. And your average is high. You go 3 for 3 one day. Your average is high through the whole series. 8 games.
Yeah, 32 at bats.
Yeah.
So, all right, Ray Schalk. So he he was in it in 1917. This is going to surprise you. In 1917, he batted .263, which is kind of average.
It's average.
And in 1919, he batted .304, believe it or not.
So Shoeless Joe was 71 points higher.
Yes.
And Shoeless Joe got thrown out because he cheated.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Schalk was .304. He was 71 points lower.
Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, a worse player.
And he's a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
And The catcher touches the ball every play.
Yeah. It's it boggles the mind. Kennesaw Mountain Landis was the commissioner at the time. He's pretty controversial for his day, and now he's pretty controversial. So the decision to kind of exile him from baseball was strange at the time. It's still strange. It's strange that they don't reinstate him, in my opinion, because wasn't it you're out of the Hall of Fame for life, which he served that punishment essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know, and I believe the reason they put him in is because the reason they took him out of baseball is because he couldn't read or write, so he couldn't decline that he didn't take the money or something like that, right? He didn't know, he couldn't read or write very well. Isn't that the story with that? He couldn't really be like, no, I didn't do it. Like, he couldn't be like, oh, here's my name. So anyone could have wrote the name.
Yeah.
I don't know the whole story. I should have looked it up more, knowing we were going to talk about him. But I believe he couldn't read and write very well, so he couldn't really defend himself that he wasn't involved. Yeah,
there's a lot of legends around that time. The Say It Ain't So Joe, the kid.
I don't think there's any moment, if you go back and look, that says like, oh well, he did something that's like, his stats all look good, but he had that one at bat that you just didn't look right. Or he had that one fly ball that he just didn't even catch it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any moment like that you'd remember it. It'd be talked about. There's no moment like that where you go, well, look, at least that one play cost him that game.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like that either. So it just doesn't seem right that he got beat up for, essentially.
Yeah, it always kind of, to me, looking back on it, because obviously we weren't there, it always seemed like a witch hunt where it was like someone's got to take the brunt of it, and let's just blame him.
Yeah, and he was the best player on the team.
Oh, yeah, far and away. It's better than Ray Schalk, that's for sure.
It's almost like, I really compare it to, I'm not going to go too far in it because, I have him on my list as well. It almost seems like what baseball did then, where they punished one of their best players of all time at the point, but in the league, and they paid a price for it. If it wasn't for Babe Ruth, there's no baseball. You can compare it to what the Astros did and why Manfred didn't go harsh on the Astros, because they were some of the best players in baseball. And if you get punished some of your best players in baseball, where does that leave you? So I think they were very comparable, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Come out and punish Altuve and Springer and those guys. You're talking some of the better players in baseball, top 25 players in baseball, even higher than that most likely, but at least the top 25. Where does that leave you? At that time, you punished probably the top 5 at least player in baseball. Throw them out, and that put you in a tough spot.
Yeah.
As baseball, and if it wasn't for Babe Ruth, you might not have overcome that.
Yeah.
Similar to another guy we're going to talk about, and I'll just tell you now, Pete Rose, another one of the best players, punished. If it wasn't for some other players, and then eventually the steroid era, that really hurt baseball as well.
Still,
obviously in the strike, but
there's still a big outcry for it. It's still kind of probably a cloud hanging over.
So punishing your best players, or your biggest names, your biggest images, really is going to hurt your sport no matter what you do. I think you can kind of compare those three and see kind of why I think Manfred didn't go at the Astros. One of the reasons.
And it's weird because, it's they get rid of Shoeless Joe. I'm not going to dwell on this too long, by the way. I'll get through my whole list. But, Shoeless Joe didn't deserve it, or it's arguable. It's like there's no hard evidence that he did it, especially
he didn't
with
what he got.
Yeah,
fully.
exactly.
No way. There's no way. There should have been some sort of smaller punishment, a 1-year ban, a fine, or take his, whatever it had to do. There's no reason he should have been thrown out of baseball for life. There's just no reason for that.
Or even give him a 1-year suspension. Don't play for a year. It's like,
take
okay,
his money. I don't know. There's no reason to take him out of the game.
Yeah. Whereas with Manfred and the Astros, I felt it was a deserved punishment that they didn't get. So it's almost like Manfred, like you said, with the stars, you don't want to mess with your biggest stars. He overcorrected. And
not that we're saying that what the Black Sox did was right or fine.
No,
that's obviously
no.
not. The thing is, you punished. It almost seemed. I think there was two guys. I think it was Shoeless Joe and another one.
Yeah.
That they punished, but there was no real reason they did it. So it's almost like, hey, you did a good job, but then it's like, then you're like, all right, stop. You're going too far. And then it's like, no, it's like, stop. You're going too far. You're going too far. Like, you went over the line. It's like, yeah, you did good. Get him out. Oh, you did good. You got him out. And then it's like, well, you got Shoeless Joe. Like, hey.
Yeah, what the hell now?
Yeah, you're going too far now. It's like he wanted to send a message, but he just kept going. People were just cheering, and then they're like, whoa.
Yeah, not him. Yeah, he's good.
Like, oh.
He batted .375. Leave him alone.
And he's like, too late.
Yeah.
It almost seems like it's like what they did was terrible. and really almost killed baseball. But you messed up, and you didn't. I feel like no one wanted to be like, hey, we messed up. No one ever wants to be like, hey, it's our fault.
Yeah. Well, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, like I said, the commissioner at the time was a bit of a hardhead, so it makes sense that someone like him would be like, get him out of here, and he's not going to hear any criticism.
Yeah. So it's a shame. It's a really shame.
But. Yeah. If you're not too familiar with the situation, or maybe you're a little new to baseball or something, definitely look that scandal up. It's a while ago. It's 100 years old now at this point.
And there's movies about it. There's shows about it.
There's a movie with Michael Rooker and what's his name played Shoeless Joe.
Charlie Sheen really was in that movie.
Yeah,
too,
Charlie
right?
Sheen was in it.
Eight Men Out.
Yep. Yeah, 8 Men Out is the name of the movie. If you want to check that out, they run it sometimes on LB Network if you want to catch it. But just quick to move on from Shoeless Joe Jackson, he did have great stats. Batted .356 for his career.
And Shoeless Joe.
Yeah,
that's one of the best things. It's Shoeless Joe.
Yeah, and for his pretty short career, and his career did get cut short when he kind of was maybe in the prime of his career. He had like a 60-some-odd point WAR. So say he plays the rest of his career, could talk about a top 5 player here.
You're talking at least another third of his career, right? At least.
Yeah, certainly.
So that's another 1,000 hits.
Yeah, probably that puts him right at probably 2,800. So you're talking like a really high candidate here. But for now, I got to put him at number 10, at least for me personally. And then right above him, we have who we just lost recently, unfortunately, Lou Brock, who was the former stolen base leader before another young man that's on this list passed him. Fantastic player. Not a super high WAR, and I was very surprised to see him not quite touching a lot of people's top 10 list, but I think he deserves a top 10 nod. Number 9, certainly. Above him, at number 8, is Al Simmons. Another guy, really high WAR, good offense. Kind of forgotten about. Even I didn't really think about him too much until I saw his stats. But great player. Kind of, maybe want to look up his stats when you get the chance. But he just, like I said, he deserves the number 10 spot. Right above him is a recent Hall of Fame inductee, which almost came too late. Or could have been too late before he got in, was Tim Raines at number 7, who another base stealer. A lot of infamous stories with him during the 80s.
In his pockets.
Yeah. There's a whole story. Look up why he slid head first and inadvertently kind of popularized that sliding style, which not a lot of people did at the time.
Other than Crazy Pete.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was diving all over the place. But yeah, Tim Raines, great player, a lot of stolen bases, hits, home runs, high WAR, good defensively. Took him a while to get in the Hall of Fame, which was just egregious in my opinion. It was just terrible. Right above him, I think, is a controversial pick, is Barry Bonds at number 6. A lot of people, especially if you're a steroid guy, are probably like, what the hell are you doing? That's just, I'm consistent with my list. It's kind of how I felt about all the steroid guys. I just can't put him in. I can't put him in the top 5 above who you'll see are in the top 5. It's just in my opinion. Although yes, he holds the single season and all-time home run lists. The totals. To me, it's just so tainted. Granted, without the steroids, great player. But still, I think if he never took steroids, he could even be number 2, 3 on my list. So I do think that Barry Bonds is a great player, regardless. But it's just the steroid use. He is the case. He is the talking point of the steroid case, and I just can't.
Yeah, pitching, Clemens, Bonds, position players.
Yeah,
as simple as that. It's a breakdown right there that those two guys will have to overcome eventually, and maybe this year, Hall of Fame wise, if they overcome it, we're in a weird spot for baseball.
Yeah,
for the next 20 years, I'd say at least 20 years.
Yeah, because kind of once him and Clemens, because him and Clemens you think got to go in at the same time, that opens the floodgates. Then if you're letting them in,
yeah, for sure.
then it's okay.
And you already have leakage.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's no doubt. We already talked Pudge, Piazza, and there's already some leakage into the Hall of Fame with some steroid guys. So maybe not steroid guys, but definitely some questions.
Yeah.
Some people bag well. I don't think so, but there's already some sort of talking the floodwaters. There's already some leakage into the Hall of Fame, and then some past players who've had incidents. I mean, older players, guys who said they took amphetamines, which was against the rules at the time. They're in. There's no question about that. No one even talks about that. So that's already in. So if you want to just push that to the side, like we talked about last week with Rizzuto and defensive guys, how they get in back then, but not now. So if you're gonna do that, now you look at the current players. You already have some leakage in there.
Oh yeah.
So if you open those, Clemens and Bonds get in, the floodgates are open. Now what do you do? What do you do with McGuire?
Yeah.
Do you backtrack? What do you do with Sosa? Do you backtrack? Like what happens?
Yeah.
Do you have to do like a whole steroid committee?
And then you'll have A-Rod coming up. He's another case that you gotta seriously consider. If they both get in and you don't let A-Rod in, then are you just picking who's okay and who's not? Because statistically, A-Rod should be a first ballot if you let them in. But
yeah, you're gonna have to. I think you're gonna end up with a steroid committee, which is the best way to do it because you have way too many guys missed at this point. Because we don't know what to do with them, and you've got to put them in. I think you got to be in, but the way baseball is now, that's kind of to conduct our list, and it's hard to put someone higher if we know they took something compared to someone who didn't. So that's kind of how we conducted our lists, and that's why it's even with Bonds with some of these stats he has, you can't put him up there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where if you put him in, I guess I'll be fine with it. I'm not a big steroid era guy, but if you do put him in, then I'm fine with having because we've been to the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't mind if walking through a section where it's like, hey, here's the steroid era guys, quote unquote, where it's not like you put an asterisk next to them, but it's like, hey, this is a part of the game. It happened.
But everybody who ever played a year in that era gets put there.
Yeah.
Or everybody who ever played a year in there gets an asterisk on their plaque. Doesn't say they didn't do it. Someone who walks in, an older guy, older generation walks in, he says that asterisk means he's not in. A newer person walks in and goes, that asterisk is just there to let you know.
So they played in this era. There's the even if it's a 1% possibility.
Yeah, because you got guys. I mean, you got guys like Hank Aaron and Willie Stargell and Mickey Mantle. These guys took amphetamines.
Oh yeah.
They took them.
Oh yeah.
They say they took them. That's illegal. Stuff you couldn't really take. They took them. No question there. And then you got older players. They had other issues that.
Oh yeah, God knows even the guys that never got caught what they did.
Yeah, and stupid stuff. Stuff that is really big now, but back then it's funny a lot. Like Babe Ruth punched an umpire.
Yeah.
You did that now, you're not getting the Hall of Fame.
No.
No.
Yeah.
So it's like, where do you put those guys? Off the field issues. What does that hurt them?
Yeah.
Which we're seeing with Schilling now. Some of his off the field stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like they should be in the Hall of Fame. I really do. Because it still takes some talent to do what they did.
Oh yeah.
Does it inflate their numbers? Does it help them? Sure. Does it inflate their numbers from a 200 hitter to a 300, 330, a 100 home run guy to a 700 home run guy? No. Does it add up? If you did it your whole career, does it add 50 home runs? Maybe.
It's the difference of him being the home run king, and is he still hitting 700 home runs? Probably. Yeah. 600 at the very, very least. Yeah, is he the home run king? Probably not, though. That's the difference.
I don't even consider him a home run king.
No, neither do
then
I.
Again, I don't even consider Hank Aaron a home run king. Babe Ruth's home run king. So you get the crown,
Yeah.
But do they belong in? Yeah.
I'd soften to it, too, so.
But do I like that they hardcore cheated? Because at the time, this was hardcore. 90s and Palmeiro and Canseco. I mean, these guys were like taking like wrestlers' amount of steroids. Yeah. That's not good. But what they did for baseball and their stats is still impressive. So should they be in? Yes.
Yeah.
Should they be considered a top player at their position because of their stats? No. I feel like that's why we ranked them there. It's like what you took is what leaves you lower on the all-time list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big talking point. We can make a whole episode about it. And Barry Bonds is really the center of it. He is the start and end of the argument, really.
Yeah. And there are some people who believe that there should be a very small amount of steroids to be given to players to keep them on the field because of the money they're given and people want to see them.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And I think, I believe, I'm not sure, don't hold me to it, I believe Euclid, as a former player, was one of the people who kind of was like into that a little bit. It was like, hey, they should be, that's something that they should look into. Mm-hmm. Some sort of very small amount of steroids to keep these players healthy and keep them on the field and stuff like that.
And it's an even playing field if everyone's kind of doing it, so. It's interesting. Like I said, we can make a whole episode about it. I know you still got to, you got your list to talk about, so we'll maybe get into it a little more. But moving on to my top 5 players on my list, another controversial is the third guy I was alluding to, was a non-Hall of Famer, which is just terrible, is Pete Rose. Pete Rose is the all-time hit king, well-deserved. I mean, he just was a hitting machine. The reason I have him at number 5 really is just because all-around stats don't quite. Not that he wasn't good, don't get me wrong. Doesn't quite stack up to the other 4 guys, at least in my opinion. I mean, you could obviously, I guess you could make a case for him top 2, top 3 with his hit total and kind of his impact on the game and winningness and all that stuff. But he should be in the Hall of Fame. Let's just leave it at that. Mm. Number 4 is Karl Yashremski, who is a famous Red Sox, great man for the game. I really did, learning about Karl Yashremski, I did like him. And he had some ridiculous stats, high WAR, good defense, great offense, obviously, a lot of home runs, high average, a lot of hits. obviously you could say something with Fenway, which there's two young men, him and one other guy that I'll get to, where you could talk about stadium and inflating stats that certainly helps a lot of people in their career. But Karl Yashremski, regardless, great, fantastic player. Right above him at number 3, I have Ricky Henderson, the all-time stolen base leader. I mean, that's just...
He's still playing baseball.
Yeah, I just don't know why. He's still flaring his collar when he hits a home run for some reason. But
snap catching and...
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Probably bones cracking all over the place.
Yeah.
No, but like I said, the stolen base king, insanely fast and good defender.
And he knew it.
Oh, yeah, he knew how good he was.
There was no waiting around.
No.
He's on first, he's on second, he's on third. All right, it's calm.
Yeah, and everyone knew in the stadium knew he was stealing. It wasn't. It's like when
He would tell him. He'd be like, "I'm going."
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "All right."
It's literally like the Dave Roberts stealing in the 2004 championship series against the Yankees, but like every time he's on base. That's how Ricky Henderson was. It's like, "Oh, I'm going. Watch this," and he would still steal it. That's how good he was. But overall, as a player, I mean, I think he holds the record for most leadoff home runs by a player or something like that, right? So a lot of home runs. Good average, just a lot of stolen bases. Even if he is a leader, it's just a lot. And just a fantastic player. He cracks my top 3. Right above him at number 2, who I did consider putting him at number 1, but ultimately decided to sit him at number 2, is Stan Musial. Just man, what a player. You look at him statistically, he even edges out in some ways the number 1 guy. Defensively he was good, iconic Cardinals guy, great person for the game. And like I said, high WAR, high average, high home runs, high RBIs, the whole thing. He's got it all. Throw it all up there. And then number 1, as you probably guessed already, is Ted Williams, who I kind of, in my head, when we were thinking about the list, it was like, who's going to be my left fielder? Oh my God, Ted Williams. It's kind of like a foregone conclusion. A lot of comparable stats to Stan Musial. You can make a case to put Stan Musial number 1. I certainly thought about it. But Ted Williams is such an iconic. I mean, he's credited by a lot of people as the best hitter of all time. I don't know if I fall into that camp. I'd have to really kind of think about it. But he's up there, about a 350 career average, high WAR. He missed a few years because of the war.
400.
And he batted 400. He's the last person to do it. In the same year that Joe DiMaggio did his 56-game hitting streak, so he didn't, unfortunately... maybe not unfortunately, but he didn't get the MVP that year.
Yeah, the story they almost traded for each other.
Yeah, there was the two GMs were talking over drinks and they got drunk and wrote it on a cocktail napkin and woke up and they came to, and they were sobered up. They decided against it, but imagine if that trade happened. But Ted Williams, I mean, his WAR I think is close to the highest. Obviously, Barry Bonds is through the roof. His WAR, but Ted Williams, for comparable to everyone else, probably has close to the highest WAR. And that's without really any defensive, he was, especially towards the end of his career, defensive liability in left field. He really wasn't good his whole career. He was average at best. But offensively, one of the best hitters in the game, and in my opinion, the number 1 left fielder of all time. So that's my list and my honorable mentions. I'll let Frank get into his kind of like third base. We have a comparable list in left field, so I'll let him get into it.
Yeah, we already talked about a lot of these guys too, so I don't have too much to add. I already threw it in already. So honorable mentions, number 1, not in any order, but my first honorable mention is Goose Gosselin. He's fantastic. Go look him up. Just leave it at that. I always have a few of these guys, older guys, who their stats are just go look them up. You're like, who the hell is that? Why is this guy throwing these names out here? This George Davis fella out here. Just look their stats up. That's all I can tell you. They're fantastic. Next one I have Manny. That play, I don't understand. I don't understand that cutoff. I don't understand it. I never will understand it. I don't understand. I just don't get it.
Every time I think about it, it's all
I don't understand. You wouldn't see that in a T-ball game.
No.
You wouldn't see it in a T-ball game.
But he did it at Fenway.
In major leagues, and he threw the ball from his knees to the same guy he was going to. It just didn't make any sense. And that's why his defensive WAR is like -19, because he was just... You could have... At Fenway, with the wall being 12 feet away, you probably could have just put a cardboard box out there, and anything off the wall, shortstop could have just fielded it. Like you would have lost nothing.
It's true.
His issues off the field, on the field, steroids obviously keep him off. Just pure stats, he's one of the best, but still trying to play, trying to make some sort of professional comeback.
Yeah.
Not Major League Baseball, but professional comeback.
Yeah.
Hitter wise, great. Defensively terrible. Brain, I don't know where that's at. So. We'll just leave it at that. The next guy, there's no debating, Albert Bell. Offensively, ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Another one. His 10 years, off the charts. Off the charts.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was the highest paid free agent of all time.
Yep.
At his contract with the White Sox, I believe. Intimidated. I mean, he was the most feared. He might be one of the most feared players to ever play baseball. I mean, ask Fernando Vina.
Yeah, put him up there with Ty Cobb.
Yeah, and he was huge. And he know it. He knows no one liked him. He didn't care. He was going to punch you in the face, hit a ball, throw his bat at you and everything. I mean, had a cork bat, they say. Had the bat boy. Well, actually, I believe it was a player. I believe it was a young pitcher on the team, a rookie pitcher. I believe had him go through the air ducts to sneak into the umpire room to steal his bat back, so he didn't get in trouble. He ended up getting in trouble, but probably not as much trouble as he would have gotten if he would have never done that, which is weird. Very weird. Fernando Vina ran him over, going to second base, and then didn't care. Just left his helmet out there, like he didn't care. That was fine. And no one even said anything to him, because, like, what are you going to do, run out there and fight him? It's Albert Bell. Joey Bell, early in his career. He was huge. He was like a refrigerator. Crushed the ball. Offensively, he's fantastic. 10 years. He only lasted about 11, 12 years. He had a more rare hip problem, and that really cut his career short. If he had a full career, he's one of the best left fielders of all time, hands down. I think he still could be a Hall of Famer with his stats. I mean, I think he's the first player and only player, I believe, to have 50-50 home runs and doubles in a season.
Tremendous.
Hit for a good average. RBIs, always had RBIs. I think he had 1,200 RBIs and over 1,200 career RBIs, I think, in 12 seasons. That's all he played. And I think he had 2 seasons where he really didn't play that many games. But he had over 1,200 career RBIs. That's just 100 RBIs a year on average. He was fantastic. Will they could get him in the Hall of Fame? No, because the writers didn't like him. Nobody liked him. That's why he's not ever going to be up for Hall of Fame. And some of his off-field issues he's had. But if he was well-liked, I'm sure he would have at least a shot. But his off-field stuff and people not liking him is going to keep him out. But without injuries and that hip problem, he's fantastic. And one quick story with him, spring training game, he got hit by a pitch. He grabbed the ball. He actually stood in the box, just stayed there. Umpire said, go down to first base. He said, no. Go down to first base. No. He said, I'm not going down to first base. I want to hit. And stood there for 5 minutes, delayed the whole game. Stood there for 5 minutes. I'm not going down to first base. I want to swing the bat. They finally made him go down to first base. He walked all the way down to first base.
Sick in the head.
But he didn't want to. He's like, I want to hit. He was crazy. But my next honorable mention is George Foster, part of the Big Red Machine. Next one, Zach Wheat. Another one. Go look him up. Zach Wheat had some ridiculous stats a long time ago, 1900s. Next honorable mention, Billy Williams. And my last one, another one from more closer to the live ball era and more Babe Ruth era, and that's Joe Medwick. Some fantastic stats, those guys. They're the old stats guys are just unbelievable.
Yeah, they just hit.
Yeah,
it's just their job.
Yeah, it's like we hit a right.
Yeah.
Like, no, you batted 340. You're more than a right.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Like you wouldn't believe this guy's batting 230 this year, and they love him. You batted like 290 to get out. You're terrible. It's what they did. So to get to my list on number 10. Like you mentioned earlier, Lou Brock. Defensively wasn't that great. Offensively was pretty good. Could steal bases. A big part of the Cardinals. And we lost him this year, which is a shame. But Lou Brock was, I think, deserved. I seen on the list too, a little lower. I think he's, if not a top 10, he's top 15 left fielder. I put him at 10 though because he is a really good player. Defense, I think, kind of hurt him for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially when he had that much speed, it kind of makes you think twice about that. Number 9, Al Simmons. I talked about him. A forgotten player, I think, by most. Number 8, The Rock, Tim Raines. Fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people know him. I follow him on Twitter and stuff. Ryan Spader. That was one of the guys he pushed. Every year he kind of has a guy he pushes. One year was Edgar Martinez, who I loved. So I feel like I really agree with Ryan Spader on a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. Raines was one of his first ones. Edgar Martinez, now he's on the Rowland. Mm-hmm. He really pushes these guys for Hall of Fame every year. And Tim Raines, I think he really helped him. I believe Spader got invited to the Hall of Fame with Tim Raines because Tim Raines really appreciated what he did. I think he was part of this book he wrote, which I have. Tim Raines is fantastic, though. Kind of a stocky guy, but man, was he good, and man, was he fast. He was kind of similar to Ricky Henderson. He's like, I'm going to go, and you're just going to like it. Head first all the time. He was crazy. Played with the Yankees. He really fit that Expos. Really looked good there. Mm-hmm. Played with a lot of teams, but man, he was good. Tim Raines. Number 7, Barry Bonds. We already went into Barry Bonds. He's the only player to 500 home runs, 500 stolen bases. He was the first player, only player. I think he was one of only a few to have 400. He might be the only one at 400 still.
Maybe, yeah.
I know he's the only one 500. Without steroids, he's a Hall of Famer. With steroids, his numbers are ridiculous. And in San Francisco, which is not really an offensive ballpark, you can still see that he's left out of baseball. He came back with the Marlins, and they kind of threw him out, 1 year as a hitting coach?
Yeah, he wasn't there long.
There was something weird there. They were like, we're not liking this. We're not getting a good... Fans aren't liking it. Something was wrong. There's no reason you threw him out that quickly.
Yeah.
So even like they tried getting him back, and people were still not ready for him.
Yeah. Which
is weird. And it's a shame because it really bothers him that he's not kind of mentioned in baseball and people don't talk about him. And Giants are kind of starting to work their way back to him. And
yeah.
Clemens, I don't think really gives a shit. It's just kind of how he is. You don't care if you like him or not.
Mm-hmm.
Bonds was a guy who kind of liked the attention. I think that was a big reason why he started doing the steroids. But we already went into him a lot, and I got him at 7, which you see on pretty much all my lists. These guys, if they're on steroids, I keep them at 7 for the most part because their stats are so good, but how they got their stats are questionable. So you kind of got to put them down towards the bottom of your top 10. Number 6, I got Shoeless Joe. You got him lower. Shoeless Joe did nothing wrong, in my opinion. One of the best hitters you're ever going to see. Great nickname. It's a shame they should relook that and just give him him and whatever family members he has left and stuff like that, relatives or whatever he's got going on, their moment in the sun, because Shoeless Joe is a fantastic player, and without those, that suspension, you're talking one of the best hitters of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
So, number 5, Karl Yashremski. If you're a Red Sox fan during that time, you were crying up and down that Ted Williams was gone. Mm-hmm. How are we going to replace Ted Williams? You replaced him with Karl Yashremski, and you had 43 years, I believe it was, of unbelievable left field play.
2 of the best left fielders of all time.
2 of the best players have ever played their game. They're in their team. So they played left field. So how are we going to replace Ted Williams? We got Karl Yashremski. How are you going to replace Karl Yashremski? I don't think they ever did.
No.
You can say Manny, but that doesn't count.
Yeah. You had what, him and Jim Rice? I mean...
Yeah, I think Jim Rice, he played a lot of left field compared to right field, but...
Still not.
And they were good.
Oh, yeah.
But you got these guys.
Yeah, how do you even compare?
Fantastic players. And again, could their stadium help them? Sure. Could their stadium help some of their defensive stats because they weren't that great defensively? Sure, because there was a smaller wall and stuff like that. Or smaller field. Big wall, smaller field to cover. But number 4, Ricky Henderson, he didn't need any help. I think he could cover the whole outfield by himself. He would tell you that too. The field in Oakland is Ricky Henderson Field now. Beloved player. Really would fit this day and age of baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Would he fit in? Ricky Henderson he could turn the light off in his room, be under his blankets, they said. That's how fast he was. He'd steal bases right away. He used to tell guys in the on-deck circle. He would tell a guy coming up behind him. He'd give him a number. 2, 1, 3. What the hell is he talking about? That would be the number of pitches to give him, he'd steal. He said, by 3 pitches, I'd be at third base. 2 pitches, I'd be at third base. So he would tell the batter after him how many pitches, give him a number.
It's nuts. It's insane.
Yeah, and he would do it. He was fantastic. He is the greatest base stealer, and no one's ever going to come close to him. 130 in one season.
Yeah, that's.
It takes, if you're a fast guy, 3 seasons to get to 130.
Mm-hmm.
He did 130 in one season. He also had 127 one season. I think he had 124 one season. 1,406 in his career. Leadoff home runs. Crazy bent over batting stance. He was fantastic, and he's an iconic player in baseball.
Oh yeah.
I bet you he's still fast.
Oh yeah, you know that.
I bet you could still steal some bases, and I bet you could probably steal 40 bases a year still.
Probably.
And he'd probably tell you that.
Oh yeah.
Probably tell you he could steal 70.
Oh yeah.
He might still be playing. He might sign somewhere. The Padres might get him. Who knows?
Oh my God.
But number 3, Pete Rose. Love Pete Rose. He knows how to hit. He's had a lot of controversy. He had corked bats, they say, and he had all this other crap. No, he didn't. He was one of the best hitters of all time. The hit leader, the hit king. Hustled all the time. Charlie Hustle. He's kind of what you wanted. It's just some of his stupid stuff he did. And that's pretty much what it was. It was just some stupid decisions at times. Because on the field, he was fantastic. Played every position. Played it pretty well. Defensively, throughout those positions, probably below average, but he played everywhere. Key to the Reds. Simple as that. He's a hit king. Is he sorry he bet on baseball? Yeah. I got a baseball sign by him says, I'm sorry I bet on baseball. Does he rub baseball the wrong way by having his own convention, Hall of Fame weekend in Las Vegas? He signs autographs. The gambling capital of the world. That rubs people the wrong way. Rubs baseball the wrong way. Does he care? No.
No.
Does he know he's a Hall of Famer? Yeah. Does everyone know he's a Hall of Famer? Yeah. But he could easily kind of turn his, be apologetic and kind of work his way back into baseball. And he has done that. But he is not ever going to change fully.
No.
He wants baseball to... I feel like he wants baseball to be like, you're looking stupid compared to me. Pete Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame, especially because he did all that from the knowledge and the information we have. He did that as a manager. Mm-hmm. Don't put him as a manager, put him as a player. That's my theory on it. To get to two guys who have no real controversy. Number 2, Stan Musial. Stan Musial's stats are ridiculous. Played a lot of first base, I know, but more memorable as a left fielder. Played, 24 years?
Yeah, he played a long time.
20-time All-Star?
Mm-hmm, something like that. 24-time All-Star.
24-time All-Star.
24.
So he played, 27 seasons or something like that.
Hold on. He played 20... Wait a minute. How is he a 24-time All-Star and he's a 22-year player?
Would you put it past him?
No, he's just that good, I guess.
Yeah.
Wait, some years he was voted twice?
They could have 2 All-Star games a couple of years. Didn't they have 2 All-Star games? One in the
there's
year, one
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's 4 years where he had 2 All-Star.
I believe they had middle of the year and then end of the year All-Star team, I believe. I'm not sure exactly, but there was some stats like that. But Stan Musial is fantastic. My favorite stat from Stan Musial, my favorite, is that he had the same amount of hits on the road as he did at home. The same amount, 1805, I believe it was.
It's a cool stat.
That's unbelievable. Fantastic player. You could easily put him 1. I almost put him 1, but Stan Musial is just fantastic. And he's, again, we've said this about a lot of players, Lou Brock and Molina and all these guys. Pujols. He's probably the best Cardinal of all time.
Yeah.
He's probably the most important Cardinal they've had, and he's just unbelievable. He had home runs, for average, base hits, and doubles, and stolen bases, and played good defense. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the greatest players that we've ever had, let alone in left field.
100%.
Number 1, I got Ted Williams. Ted Williams, I think, is pretty much set in stone there. If not, he's set in stone in the top 2 with Musial. You can see his importance to baseball. I'll never forget the 1999 All-Star game.
Yeah.
You never seen an All-Star moment like that. And you can say, oh, Mo, and no. You never seen an All-Star moment like that.
No.
There was something about that 99 All-Star game that will never get repeated for some reason. And there's a lot of players who are like similar players to what Ted Williams and their unbelievable legacy that you could have done that for. But some reason it was maybe because it was like the, going into the 2000s and there's some, all that stuff going on. But that All-Star game is probably the greatest All-Star game, greatest roster, greatest All-Star game. It just, there was that moment is maybe the most iconic moment in baseball in the last 50 years, maybe one of the all time. All those players, McGuire shaking his hand, Sosa. You had some of the best hitters who ever played baseball. I don't care steroids or not. And they were overcome by Ted Williams.
Yeah.
Who was on the mound, I believe, in a wheelchair or in a cart.
Yeah, actually, I think he was in a cart.
Yeah. And he was, hitting right there on the field, And those guys were overcome. Like, McGuire was mind-blown, And that moment tells you kind of how important Ted Williams was, and is always going to be. Missed prime of his career to go fight in a war, to fight a bigger cause. He missed prime years, 4 years or so, in the middle of his career to go fight in wars, and was a war hero.
Pilot, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he had, I believe he had a crash landing or some sort like that. He had a big issue, but he was a hero. He missed years of his career. Unbelievable. But I do use this one thing against Ted Williams, as I do with any other player, because people piss me off with this. With other players, his stadium helped him. And the only reason I started using that is because people use it for Colorado and nowhere else. So I started using it for Ted Williams and Yashremski and those guys and Wade Boggs, David Ortiz. Their careers numbers definitely got inflated a touch from playing at Fenway, as did anybody who played at Yankee Stadium. Anybody played at Polo Grounds because the corners were so short.
Yeah.
Center field, obviously, but corners were so short. Colorado, you want to enhance their stats because of that, then you got to enhance everybody's. So that's my one thing with Ted Williams. I think his stats definitely got a little boost from playing at Fenway.
Just real quick, I just want to throw something that I just found out in there. He only batted under 300 once in his whole career.
It was last year, his rookie year.
Second to last year. And his last year, he batted over 300.
Yeah. And he missed, 4 years at age 28?
He missed 3 from, like kind of the early part of his career. He actually, I think, left after his famous 1941 season.
How old was he?
And he went to fight, he was 24. So he left, he had 4 years in the league, he was 23. His 24-year, he would have played, but he came back at the age of 27.
So it's 24, 25, 26 he missed. And then I believe he missed a year with the Korean War. The end of his career, right? Or was he already retired at that point? 'Cause I believe he went to the Korean War too, right?
He retired in 1960 and haven't any missed years through there, so it must have been maybe maybe after he retired.
He had a part where he was in the Korean War as well. Where he took another. Maybe there was something else or off season or something. I believe he had some sort of impact on the Korean War too in the military. So he missed 3 seasons of, I don't know, 200 hits.
And there's 2. Well, actually, you might be right because in 1952 and 1953, I don't know if he was. I really don't know if he was injured or something, but he only played 6 games in one year and 37 in the other. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe he went. Maybe he played 6 games and went off to fight. I mean, early 50s. That's right around the Korean War years, I believe. So yeah, imagine you take back.
I'm saying what, average 180 hits at least.
Got it.
30 home runs, 180 hits.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he never batted under 300 except for 1 year. So
let's say 180 hits for 3 years is that's what 600, 20, 40, 60. It's 540.
Something like that. Yeah.
140 hits. Added another year in there, 180 because you had the 2 years where you kind of missed. So you're talking 720 hits.
Yeah, which puts him well above 3,000 because he doesn't quite have 3,000 hits, but he does have 500 home runs.
Yeah,
so
30 home runs for 4 more years. It's 120.
Yeah, he's got probably right around. He's closing in on 700. Yeah, so
and those are just rough numbers.
Yeah, those are. Yeah, imagine if he had better years.
Peak years, 3 of those years.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of his career were better than average people's years, but obviously not his peak years. You don't know what he could have done. He could have been a 420 one year. He was Ted Williams. But I got Ted Williams 1. I'm not going to get into it too much, but I do want to go back. I missed something. On 1.
Okay.
Ricky Henderson, as fast as he was, Prince Fielder has more inside the park home runs than Ricky Henderson did.
Oh my god! I remember you telling me that.
I believe Prince Fielder has 2 of them. Ricky Henderson has 0.
That's so weird. How did that never happen? How did he not just hit a ball in the gap and just maybe it bounces weird or something and he gets around to home? I just don't know. How did that?
Benjamin Molina has 1. Rick Henderson doesn't. So I want to backtrack to that because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
the fastest man in the world, and he can't he's getting outrun by Benjamin Molina if you really want to break it down that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's terrible. That's so weird.
But yeah. So left field, as I said, ended at number 1 is Ted Williams, and his career is ridiculous, and he could have even had more numbers if it wasn't for his courageous act to go to the war. Not like it was really his choice too much, but his courageous act to go to war and fight for a bigger cause.
Yeah. Great list. Great player, Ted Williams. Like you said, or like we talked about, Karl Yashremski, following him up as like the successor.
Yeah, 43 years of just pure dominance.
Yeah.
Position.
I mean, Red Sox fans at that time must have been, I mean, granted, he didn't win a World Series, but I mean, having those guys platooning at left field, like, or patrolling left field,
Yeah, it really spoiled them. Like I said, you had Jim Rice, who was a very good player. I almost put him as my honorable mention here. And Manny Ramirez, who is an honorable mention, obviously, steroids. It almost spoils their numbers because you're like, oh, they're not Ted Williams. It's like, oh, not sure. Manny Ramirez, 555 home runs. No, he's no good.
Yeah.
Jim Rice was, 300 home runs, whatever he had. One of the better left fielders, top 20 left fielders of all time. No good.
Yeah. So it is. Yeah, the Red Sox got something going on with left fielders.
But 2 great positions to talk about.
Next episode, though, there are some young men. There's one young man in right field.
Well, you have the greatest. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to spoil things. He's the greatest baseball player to play baseball. He always will be, and he always was. He always will be. He always is going to be. And if you don't like that, then don't listen. Because that's as simple as that. Because he's the best of all time.
And center field, there's some people that come close to that too. So the center field and right field got some
unbelievable names.
Yeah.
Now I don't know what the bottom of those lists are going to look like.
No, but
I'm sure the top 5 are going to be big yuck. They're going to be you're going to look at them and go, oh, those are some of the best players who ever touched the baseball field.
Oh yeah. I can think of 2 right in my head that are considered some of the best. 3, 4, right off the bat, center and right. You can think of right away. Yeah. So that's going to be an exciting episode.
And then the one after that is a fun episode.
Yeah.
Managers and some uniforms, and we'll do some mascots. We'll do stadiums, I think, all-time stadiums and stuff like that. And we'll do some funner episode, some more top 10 lists, just to kind of wrap it up and bring us into
kind of the spring training and stuff.
Yeah, past free agency. We'll have like an idea of kind of what the hell we're looking at.
Even though the off season's moving slow. There's still a lot of guys out there.
Padres.
So, well, yeah, they're trying to keep things fired up.
Yeah,
So
we talked about them last year. Last episode getting Snell. Now they got Darvish, and they're still in the Bauer sweepstakes. So there is some movement. I think also a big thing to get into. A quick note: there is no planned delays for the season.
that's good.
They are expected to start spring training and everything on time. In our last episode, we talked about how they could get pushed to Memorial Day, and they were actually talking up a plan with that. They stopped those talks, and they plan to start the season on time.
Good.
So unless there's something crazy outbreak, vaccines don't work, the world explodes, we should be starting spring training in mid-February, games by the end of February, and real baseball beginning of April.
Good.
And it should be nice and cold in Detroit and snowing in Chicago and maybe snowing in Colorado till June, and we'll love it.
Yep. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited. But, so unless you got final notes on some of the guys we talked about, you can go into your trivia question for the week, which is a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's pretty much it there. But let's get into the best part of the episode, and that's the trivia question. And I will obviously go with something that we talked about. The trivia question this week is, who has the highest defensive WAR in left field in all time MLB history?
It's pretty surprising. I mean, I did guess it, but it was kind of a shot in the dark.
Yeah. And just to let you know, outfield is a harder defensive WAR position to accumulate. Center field a little bit easier, but if you go look at left field, you'll be quite surprised. And I used Baseball Reference to get this, so if somehow crazy it's wrong, I got it right from Baseball Reference. Showed Mike. But right field seems a little bit more true to left field. They both were similar. Center field was a little bit more defensive, so those numbers kind of were different. But the highest defensive WAR for any left fielder in MLB history is actually Breck Garner.
Yep.
With a 12.8 defensive WAR.
Yeah, it's the reason that I guessed that was because he was for a while, obviously his speed is waned, he's getting older, but there were a few seasons where he was considered like the best defensive outfielder, even the best defender in baseball, statistically. So based on his ability to get to basically everything, because how fast he was, and his route, efficiency and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought Breck Garner was. I knew he was above average defender and he was good, but I watched him all the time, and I always thought, I'm like, boy, he. There's times where you're like, nice play, but you're like, boy, that looked a little weird.
Yeah, it looked
I
ugly.
never thought his arm was fantastic. Defensively, he's good. Don't get me wrong, but that just, you're like, really? And some of the guys you got on here, I mean, Alex Gordon, okay, Starlin Marte's up there, Adam Duvall, Carl Crawford, Chad Pinder's up there. I mean, what is going on?
Yeah.
Ricky Henderson. It's like, what?
Yeah, I mean, with Gardner, you see him, he's backpedaling, he's catches a ball on his tippy toes sometimes, and he don't make it look pretty, but he gets the job done, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you can tell us right there. So yeah, the highest defensive WAR in left field in Major League Baseball history for a career is Breck Garner at 12.8.
Good for him. He's had a nice little career.
Oh yeah,
Breck Garner.
That just was surprising.
I thought it was a little surprising too. When I was like Breck Garner, like, yep.
And I was looking at maybe third base, but
you kind of knew.
Yeah, you kind of know what that's all about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. That wraps up this episode. And like you said already, center field, right field is going to be.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really can't.
Be exciting because those are some of my favorite players. Like first base, I had like 6 guys on there. I said those were like my favorite players. Starting pitching, I felt very similar. I had a lot of guys I liked there. Center field and right field, there's 5 names on the top of my head right now that I get back. Those are like my favorite players. One is my favorite player of all time. Doesn't matter. So I don't care if Jesus came down with swinging a bat. There's one guy who's better than him.
Yeah, if you've been listening to us and you kind of know how we talk about players, you could probably guess who it is.
You could have put him on another list at a whole different position.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't have been wrong.
It's true. It's very true.
Yeah, he's a young boy.
Yeah, so we'll get into that episode in 2 weeks, and that'll wrap up the Around the Horn list, and then we'll get into, like Frank said, we'll get into the kind of weirder, kind of miscellaneous list of just stuff around baseball. But as I said last episode, we are recording this the week after the last episode went live, so this is going to go up. This will go up normal time. You guys won't even know the difference, but in case there is, we're talking like there's no real off-season moves. Say, I upload this and Trevor Bauer got signed and LeMahieu, and there were all these moves. It's just because this was recorded earlier. There's no we're just oblivious. We just recorded it earlier because I'm going on vacation. So just to reiterate that, if you are a little confused, that's the case. But unless you've got any final notes or anything you just want to leave it off with, I guess we'll just wrap this up. and get out of here.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not much big news in baseball other than Darvish did get traded to the Padres, which we kind of mentioned. It was a chance last week or last episode, but now it actually happened. We'll dive into more of that once we get to the off-season summary episode, I guess you could say. And baseball stop talks and expect to have season start on time. Everything, spring training and everything. So that's our two biggest news, and there were two things we talked about last episode. So other than that, that's pretty much it. Ready to wrap up this greatest of all time list and get to real baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball's coming around. We're talking about that. So everything's kind of going the right way.
Yeah, hopefully if everything starts on time, we have our fantasy and everything's kind of normal. We can have kind of what we planned the show to be in a longer sense, because we did kind of, the 60-game season, we kind of did have the episodes we want, but it was only for a few weeks, so it was kind of weird. So, yeah, we're excited to start that up and have kind of a full season back in regular and just a full season for the podcast.
Coming up on, a year? Right?
Yeah, going to be a year soon, yeah.
Or February.
Yeah.
6th or something?
Yeah, I'll have to look up the upload date, but yeah, we're right around there. So
coming up on a year. Nonsense, really.
Yeah, oh yeah. All right, then. That's all I got. So let's get out of here. Thank you guys for listening. You can listen to this podcast on Google Podcasts as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can listen to this podcast on our regularly updated YouTube channel as well as our website, screwball.podbean.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RealMikeLepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre.
And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at FDubs10.
You can follow our official Screwball Twitter at ScrewballPod. You can follow our official Screwball Facebook at ScrewballPod, no E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep, take care.